Hey guys, welcome to another video. In this video, I want to talk about creating a Redshift cluster using AWS Console, and then we are going to fill the database inside cluster with some dummy values, and then we are going to query it back. So let's get started. Okay, so I have logged into AWS Management Console with the console AWS Amazon.com URL. If you have your account created or IAM user, you can log in with your credentials. Once you are logged in, you'll see the home screen of the console, and from here we can either search for AWS Redshift, right, and it'll show up. I guess I have to type the entire thing. So you can either search for AWS Redshift, it's at the top, or we can go to services, the drop down, and it should be under analytics section. So since AWS Redshift is again meant for analytics, so AWS put it under analytics section, which makes sense. So we'll click on AWS Amazon Redshift here, and shortly we'll see a welcome screen. And I guess you won't see it for if you have a cluster already, then you won't see it. It will take you to the your created cluster, which I had. But this screen you should see for the very first time. So, and there are a video to get started and stuff like that. We don't need any of that. We'll just simply create a cluster, and on this screen we'll configure different things. So Redshift cluster, we'll say Redshift cluster, let's say YouTube video. Okay, and there are two types, of production and a free trial. So if obviously we are not going to use a production one because that's going to be a paid version that's going to charge us. So we're going to use a free trial. If you have already used a free trial, then it's not going to work for you anymore, because Amazon is telling us that if your organization has never created Amazon Redshift cluster, you are eligible for free limited time trial, right? So if you haven't ever created the free trial for Amazon Redshift, you can use it for a limited time. So again, you have to make sure you don't utilize it beyond limited time, otherwise you'll get charged. So we'll be aware of that. So I'm using a free trial here. Free trial comes with a DC2 large one node machine. So there are two virtual CPUs, that's pretty good, and 160 GB storage, so that's very decent. And database name, we'll keep it dev. We can change it to anything else, but I think dev sounds good. The default port is 5439. For Postgres, the default is 5432, so we can see it's easy to remember that 5439 is for Redshift cluster. Master username AWS user is pre-populated. We can change it to anything else, but I'll keep it AWS user for now. Master user password, we can give it anything. I'm going to type my password. You can use any the password that you like. So let's see if okay, all three green, so I think I've done okay job there. You can use any password, any secure password that you like. And then let's see what we have in permissions. I won't change anything here, so that's pretty much it. Let's create a cluster, fix errors before proceedings. Let's see what we have. Okay, so the must be a lowercase. Okay, so we'll say YT, that's it. Okay, now let's create a cluster. Okay, so this was a cluster that I had before. It's already in available status, and this is the new cluster that's been created, and you can see it says creating, modifying, so it's going to take some time. When and after that it will become available for us, and then we'll start playing with it, like creating a table, inserting stuff into the table, and then querying data back from it, right? So I'll fast forward this video, and we'll be back in a minute when cluster is in available status. Alright, so in under 2 minutes our cluster is now available. You can see the status is in available status instead of creating, so let's click on that. So now we are inside cluster information. This is the most useful page that we are going to use for Redshift. And then we can see we have our cluster name here, the identifier, uh, with the GUID. There's a status, and there are three different endpoints on the right hand side. This is the endpoint that we are going to use if we are going to use any DB client, like SQL Workbench or any other DB client that we can use. If we want to connect over JDBC, this is the endpoint that we want to use, right? And then there is a query monitoring tab at the bottom. So if we run our queries, it's going to tell us which query is taking longer time, which is faster and stuff like that. And then the properties, this is again a very useful tab. It tells our database is a dev that we have specified, and it's listening on port 5439. And then there are master username and other things. This is the virtual private cloud given to our Redshift cluster, and the zone and other information. The security group, this is going to be very vital when we are trying to connect it outside the VPC, right? So if, for example, if we are trying to connect to our Redshift cluster to other service, we need to open up certain ports and inside the security group, which we'll look later. And then there are other, I guess, scaffolding stuff. Now let's look at editor. So Amazon gives us this console where we have editor as well. The query editor is simply like every other SQL editor, where we can create our tables in the database and insert records. So let's see in the drop down what database we have. Let's first connect to the database, and we'll say okay. So I don't want that. Let's change connection, and we'll say create a new connection. Temporary credential is fine. Database name is dev AWS user. Okay, and let's connect to it. Alright, so I'll choose the dev database, and then I'll choose the public schema. And then in this dev database under public, we can create our new tables, right? And let's just look at different syntax. I have the nice documentation from AWS Redshift. I've opened in the next step. So let's look how can we create a table. So we can create a table by using create table name, and then we can give different columns name, right? So let's do that. So right here we'll say create table, and our table name, let's say it's video, right? And then we can give different column name, right, with the data type in front of it. So we'll say title, that's it, title of the video, and then we'll make it varchar. And then similarly we'll say description of the video, and then we'll make it a varchar. Okay, and let's also create an identifier. So we'll say ID, and we'll make it an int. Okay, and we'll select the entire thing, and we'll run the command. In the bottom we'll see there's error syntax. Let's see what it is, and I think I've used a comma to wrong place. Let's run it again. Okay, so it says completed. That means that we should now see a table. So if I select public again, we see a video object populated. Let's expand that, and there are three different columns in this video object, right? And obviously we haven't inserted anything, so we won't see any data in it, but if there is something, we can insert the data in it, right? Inserting new records in the table, so we'll do insert into video values, and then for ID we'll just say 1. For title we'll say AWS Redshift intro, and then for description we'll say video discussing about Redshift. I'm just putting any simple string there. Okay, then we can select that and we'll do run. Okay, okay, I know what's wrong. I've used double quotes. SQL doesn't like it, so let's just use single quotes here. All right, single quotes, and then run it again. Okay, it says it's completed. So now let's again go to public, and if we do preview data, so we should see this record now in the video table. And for the very first time it takes a while, so we can see one record that we just entered. And obviously instead of doing preview data, we can also do select star from video, right? If we do that, we'll see the similar result at the bottom. Same thing, so we can do preview data or select a star regular SQL query. Now let's try running the delete command. So if we do delete from video where id equals to 1, so if we do that, they'll say completed. That means our record is gone. Now let's do select a star again, and we should not see that record anymore. We should see an empty table with nothing in it. Okay, so no resources to display, and I don't think it shows anything when there is nothing in the table. Okay, so let's insert back this guy again, and now let's do select again. Okay, so we got the object back, so that's good, right? So we are getting the idea. We can basically run insert command, select command, delete command, all of those commands using this query editor, and that will directly populate stuff in the database, with the given table, right? So we have this one table video, we can create a multiple table like that using create table command, and then we can populate those table, right? So this query editor is very handy in those scenarios, right? So we can use this query editor, or we can use any other client, right? So, all right, let's take a look. How can we connect to a Redshift cluster outside the VPC? I want to use a SQL client called SQL Workbench, and you can install that um, from the internet. It's free, open source. So yeah, I don't think it's an open source, but it's available for free, and it's not MySQL Workbench, it's a SQL Workbench. So you have to download build 127 and click on generic package for all system. Once you download that, you have to extract it, and then if you are running a Windows machine, then there will be exe. You can double click on it, and they'll start for your SQL Workbench. If you are running a Unix based system, there will be a .sh shell script that you can simply run from the terminal, and once you run that, it's going to look like something like this, and that's where you can start creating your connection, right? So we'll do file and connect window, and then it'll populate a new connection window for you, and then we'll say new profile. We'll name Redshift. Since I already have Redshift, so I'll put a new name, so Redshift -1. If you don't have a Redshift already, you can just say Redshift, that'll work. And then here we'll select Amazon Redshift from the drop down, because there's the driver we want. In the URL, we'll need a JDBC URL or of a Redshift cluster. So I'll go back to Redshift console and copy the JDBC URL and paste it here. It will need a username. Then you can give the username, master username, and the password that you provided when creating your cluster. Now if you create OK and test, it won't connect. The reason for that is inside the properties, if you see, there is a setting called publicly accessible. It's a disable now, so if you want to access your cluster outside the VPC, you have to enable it. So let's just enable that. Let's just keep it as it is. It says your cluster is being modified. It's modifying the cluster, and by modifying it means it's just putting the publicly accessible property out there on the cluster, making it enable outside VPC. So we can see publicly accessible properties enabled. Now let's go back to our SQL Workbench, and I think we are good now, right? Let's just try doing okay, and it's connecting to the database, and it's connected, right? So if we do now, we can actually create a table inside our cluster. So if we do create, let me increase the zoom, see if it's easier. Let's do one more. Okay, so we do create table, and then we do table name, then we do id is integer, and then title, we'll say varchar, description varchar, right? And let's run that. Select the entire thing. It says table video created, and then if we go to console here, we just verify if we actually created a table. Let's connect to that AWS user, and the database is YT database user, no, database name is dev AWS user, and we'll just connect. It's connected. We're going to go to dev, and we're going to go public, and we should see one table. This is the table we just created, right? And now insert something. Let's also say insert into values. Let's see what we have first, right? So we'll do select star from video. Let's run that. Maybe we just need it doesn't like too many commands, so we'll say select star from video. Okay, it's empty, and just making sure it's the same thing here. We are not querying something else, so it's empty here to the we don't have anything. So let's start putting stuff inside the video table. So we'll do insert into video values, and then we'll say id is 1, AWS Redshift. I need to change the font for that. This is the default font, but I'm just putting a string there for title and description. So it's going to look like 1 AWS Redshift, and description is description. Let's execute that. An error occurred because we have, again, I did the same problem. I did the same mistake again. We have double quotes. We're going to do one single quote. Let's execute that. Insert into video successful. That's pretty neat. Let's going to preview data again. The cluster. Whatever. Okay, I don't know what's going on, but let's do preview data. Let's select from here. Select star from video, and we should see one entry here, right? So we have just inserted that value. Now let's insert another one. Control Z. Let's insert another entry. Redshift, and that's good. Let's insert another one. And now we can do select again. Select star from video. That's good. Run that. And now we have 2 entries. So you get the idea, right? We can insert and we can select from outside the cluster using our SQL Workbench client, and that's more practical scenario because we don't want to open the console every time we want to query. Also, the console is not too smart. I mean, it can does the basic job, but it doesn't have intelligence and stuff like that, right? So okay, now select is working here. Just make sure we have 2 entries here, so you can see another 2 entries here. Let's just for the sake of testing, let's insert another one. SQL Workbench. So just entering SQL Workbench now. Let's make it 3. We'll just enter here. Now let's just query it again, and we should see another result here. So we see SQL Workbench, right? So that's the idea, right? We are actually querying this Redshift cluster outside the VPC using the SQL Workbench, right? I'm going to paste the link of this client in the description link below. You can simply download that and start querying your cluster. That's it for this video, guys. Thanks a lot. I hope you guys liked it. See you in the next video. Thank you.